In the years that I've been studying polemics against Islam, it seems that people are getting better at addressing the issues about Islam in general. However, I'm starting to see smarter and smarter people fall for stupider and stupider arguments. And today is one of those people, Javad Hashmi, who has a PhD candidate for religious studies at Harvard. So this is someone who is by no means dumb at all. This is a highly intelligent person. Just to even get at Harvard, highly intelligent. However, in a debate between him and Apostate Prophet, he argued that Islam is less violent than Christianity, a topic which is obviously not false and which we will cover today. And so, without further ado, Javad Hashmi.
Round 1. Fight!
All right, when it comes to the Quran and just cause, it endorses a very strict defensive war principle, calls for a higher ethic of forgiveness. It endorses a non-aggression principle. It says, quite literally, do not aggress, for God does not love aggressors. And a no harm principle. If they let you be, do not make war on you and offer you peace, then God does not allow you any way to harm them.
Now in this first clip, Javad Hashmi brings up multiple Quran verses which he seems to have misrepresented or just blatantly lied about. For example, in Quran Surah 22, verse 38 to 39, he seems to say that the verse represents that, oh, you can only defend yourself. That is the only way you can do war. In Islam, defense is not the same thing as it is in the West. In the West, defending yourself is defense against an offensive attack. However, in Islam, defense is different. For example, in Surah 3, verse 28, it says to take not the unbelievers as friends over believers. And it says to guard yourselves against the unbelievers. Now, to defend or guard yourself against them, that's not guarding yourself against somebody who is launching an offensive, right? That is guarding yourself against unbelievers, and that is what Islam portrays as defense, is guarding yourself against unbelievers. Not only do we see that the Quran uses defense in that way, but we see that also Muslims do as well. For example, in Osama bin Laden's letter to Americans, he actually quotes Surah 22, verse 38 through 39 in the first lines of his letter. So not only does the Quran say that this is how defense is, but this is also how other Muslims see it as well. After quoting Surah 22, he quotes Surah 42, verses 41 through 43, and says that this shows a higher ethic of forgiveness in Islam. However, we can actually look at the verse and see what it says and see that this is not a higher ethic of forgiveness. For example, look at the words that the verse actually uses. It says, defend yourself after having been wronged. This is not defending yourself while being wronged. This is retaliation. This is vengeance. This is showing that you can actually get revenge in Islam, and it allows that. So it's not a higher ethic of forgiveness. This is allowing revenge in Islam. So after this, Javad Hashmi quotes Surah 2, verse 190, which says to only fight those who fight you and to not aggress anybody. However, it seems that Javad Hashmi is not aware that scholars like Ibn Kathir in his Tafsir say that this verse was actually abrogated by Surah 9, verse 29. Not only that, but if we're supposed to take this verse at face value, we see that the term of fight in Islam is different, again, than it is in the West. In the West, to fight someone who fights you is like a defensive, right? So if somebody aggresses against you or is getting physical against you, you can defend yourself against them. However, in Islam, it's defending those who attack Allah. We can see this in Surah 9, verse 5, where it says to wait in ambush, to kill and to raid unbelievers until they believe. We see that this is not calling for people to attack those who attack them, but to attack those who just do not believe. This is different than just a defensive. This is a defense against people who do not believe in Allah, not an offensive attack. We then see a quote from Surah 4, verse 90, which says that you should not make war on those who make peace with you. Sounds good, right? Well, if we actually look in the previous verse, we'll see that this destroys his entire argument. For example, in Surah 4, verse 89, it says to make war on those who disbelieve. It is not making war on those who make war on you, but making war on those who disbelieve. It then says to only take those as allies who emigrate for the cause of Allah. So the only way you can make peace with those people is if they basically become a Muslim. So basically you have two options. You become a disbeliever and they make war on you, or you become a Muslim. Those are the two options that the verses are giving. And he completely lies/misrepresents what the verse is actually talking about.
Now, there are some militant-sounding passages, what Professor Patricia Crona calls blood-curdling passages, but she also notes that the blood-curdling passages are mobilizing rather than legislating. That is, give them hell. It's not about how to fight. And she says, though the language of the Quran is often extremely militant, the principle of forgiveness is reiterated between the assertions of the right to defend oneself.
There are a few problems I have with this, like why is he quoting a Western scholar as if they are authoritative to all Muslims? And why is he acting like this is the end-all be-all for Quran interpretation? But putting that aside, there is good evidence that this verse is not just talking about a specific type of Christians, or this is just motivating Muslims to attack this specific type of Christians and Jews. Because, for example, we can look at the verse after it, Surah 9, verse 30, and we can see that Jews are those who say that Ezra is the Son of God, and that Christians are those who say that Jesus is the Son. So this is not just talking about one type or a specific type of Christians and Jews. This is talking about those who do that specific act. So this first part was mainly about Islam and kind of showing how he misinterprets or just blatantly lies about these Quranic verses. And the second part is going to be more about biblical interpretation and the Christianity part of side, and how he thinks that somehow Christianity is more violent. So without further ado, we're going to get into how Christianity is somehow more violent.
As far as the justifications for war, it has nothing to do with the enemy attacking you, but rather their sinfulness and idolatry of the enemy and the fear of religious contamination if you were to live with them, as well as a divine command. God simply wills it and gifts this land to you.
Now, I would actually agree with most of the things that he puts up on the slides. I think that fear of religious contamination is putting it very, very mildly, but we'll get into that in the next clips to come. But he's putting all of this as if like God is whispering in someone's ear, or somebody's having these crazy thoughts and they're acting on these crazy thoughts. You need to put the Bible in perspective of all the past that have happened before that event has happened. So, for example, these people have not just heard God talk and then just did whatever he said. He followed through on many promises. For example, he led them into the promised land. He led them out of the desert, pillars of fire. He dropped manna. So it's not just God whispering in their ear. They're seeing all of these miracles happen, and they're actually being given empirical evidence for a lot of these miracles. And so they're acting not out of just this weird voice. They're acting out of something that they can see. But not only that, that's just the theology of faith. We see this in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, that faith is based on evidence, not just some blind voice that you hear. This is something that a lot of atheists and just non-believers seem to not understand, is that it's not just some voice that you hear. It's based on actual empirical evidence.
Now, what about the ethic as far as within the Promised Land? Within the Promised Land, it's genocidal harem warfare. Utterly annihilate everyone who lives there.
So we see that he quotes Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 16 through 17. And it seems that he kind of glosses over how the verse talks about these people doing abhorrent things, and that they're actually wanting to kill them all and destroy them all because they're doing these really, really bad things, which we are going to get into in a future response. However, I kind of want to focus on this accusation of genocide in the Old Testament, which does not make any sense. The reason why it doesn't make any sense is we see multiple verses in the Old Testament where it says that you should actually love the foreigner as if they were your own. For example, in Leviticus chapter 19, verses 33 through 34, it says to love the foreigner as if they're native born. This is the same in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 19, and then, there's another verse in Exodus chapter 23 as well. We can also look at Rahab and see that not only was she saved by God, she was integrated into Jewish society, and she became part of the line of Jesus. We can also look at Uriah the Canaanite and see that whenever he was killed by David, that David was severely punished. If God is trying to genocide all Canaanites, why is he saving Rahab and making her part of the line of Jesus, and then punishing a man after his own heart, David, after killing a Canaanite and seen as one of his greatest sins? Why is he doing that if he is trying to genocide the Canaanites?
Now, the Christian apologists will say, again, that's a time-bound thing, and it's only the 7 nations. What does it say about Amalek? It says, now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy them. Kill both men, women, children, and babies. Blot out remembrance of Amalek. Instead, scholars think Amalek is a mythical, archetypal, and typological term used to refer to, quote, all of your enemies throughout time and space. There is, in fact, a perpetual command to engage in genocide if you say someone is Amalek. This is because the Bible says the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation.
So I recorded a response to this originally. However, whenever I came back and edited the video, I wasn't really satisfied with my response, so I decided to make a more clarified response to this claim. So first of all, Javad Hashmi says that genocide is the specific targeted killing or murder of a religious, ethnic, or racial group. However, he describes the term Amalek as a term that describes Israel's enemies. So how can Amalek be a term used for genocide if Amalek does not target a specific religious, racial, or ethnic group? It doesn't make sense for it to be a genocidal word. Now, it can be a word that is violent in nature. However, it cannot be a genocidal word since it does not target a specific group. It only targets Israel's enemies. That would be like saying that any group is in the ancient world is going to do that. That doesn't mean that every single war that has ever been fought is genocide. Just because you're fighting and wanting to kill your enemies does not mean you are committing genocide. That is just war. This brings up another point about the Amalekites, as what did they do that God thought was so heinous? Well, it describes why in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 19, where it says that the Amalekites would continuously go to the back of the Israelite encampment and kill these innocent people. So we see that these Amalekites weren't just these peaceful people that were living in the land before the Israelites. They were killers, and they murdered people, and not just but like innocent people that weren't attacking them, so non-combatant people. Not only that, but we can see that actually Canaanites did child sacrifice. For example, in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 9, it describes this, and same in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 31. So we see that this combination of attacking the innocent Israelites and doing child sacrifice, just these awful things, and that this was happening and kept on happening, that something needed to be done about it, because at that point it wasn't just involving just the Canaanites. It started to involve the Israelites and the innocent peoples.
And that was all commanded by God. There's so many genocides that I can't mention all of them, but I'll just list these that Joshua engaged in, city after city devoted to God.
So in this last and final clip, we see that Javad Hashmi says that there were so many genocides committed by Joshua that he can only list the amount of genocides. Now, most of these, the main corpus of them, will be in Joshua chapter 10, so that's the main part I'm going to focus on. But If you don't know, in Joshua chapter 10, Joshua actually gains an ally called the Gibeonites. And so whenever these Canaanite kings hear that Israel has allied with the Gibeonites, they then attack the Gibeonites. And so Joshua is called on by the Gibeonites to actually defend them against these attackers. So these wars, these so-called genocidal wars, they are actually defending against an attacking army. And actually, conveniently by Islamic standards, this is defense. So it's defense by Christian standards, and it's defense by Islamic standards. No matter which way you look at it, the Israelites were defending their allies and themselves against an attacking army. So just to kind of do a quick recap on this, we are going to play a quick game of is it genocide or not? We will pick out a few wars to see if you can spot if the war was actually genocide or if it was not genocide. Here we have our first war, World War I. Was it genocide or not? It was genocide. Just like in Joshua chapter 10, you are not supposed to help your allies no matter what, even if they call out for your help, and brutally murder them. Now on to war number 2, World War II. Was it genocide or not? And it was genocide. Why do we keep on bothering these Germans, these peaceful people? You know, why do we keep on bothering these racist, extremely violent Nazi people? It makes no sense. Just leave them be. Let them do what they want. Let them live. Okay, now war number 3. We have Mehmed's siege on Constantinople. Was it genocide or not? And it was not genocide. Although the war might have seemed to be caused purely based on religion and ethnicity, it's actually not genocide because they are Muslim and Muslims cannot commit genocide because, as we have seen, the Quran does not allow that. So they can't commit genocide. It is impossible. Now, although I was just kind of being silly, it is serious in a way. It kind of seems like that meme that was popular quite a while ago, where people would say the most heinous things that you could possibly ever say. And at the end of it, they would put in Minecraft and it'd make it all okay. That's what it seems like people do in Islam. They can say the most heinous things. They can say the most terrible things. But then they just mention one verse that might, not even for sure, but might indicate some way of peaceful living. Then they say, oh, that's how all of Islam is. No, there are multiple you can't just say in Minecraft. You can't just list one verse and say, oh, that's how the whole religion is. No, you actually need to look at it from a theological concept. And what Islam shows is that it is violent and that it allows for violence, not just because of a defensive manner, but because you are non-believers and you do not believe in Allah. For my conclusion, I wanted to say that I did not make this video because I thought that Javad Hashmi made a few mistakes here or there. Of course, we all make mistakes, maybe misquote a couple of things. However, I thought that throughout the debate, Javad Hashmi showed that almost every, if not every single point that he made, he either extremely misrepresented or lied about what he was talking about. I think this is also indicative of a larger problem, which is why is someone who is a PhD candidate for religious studies at Harvard getting the ABCs wrong about Islam? And why is he lying in order to prove his point? Why do we see smarter and smarter people making these stupider and stupider claims and then having to continually lie for them? I mean, I have some ideas as to why. For example, you look at who Javad Hashmi quotes. He's quoting these Western scholars who obviously have not read the core sources like the Hadith or the Sirah literature, and maybe even haven't even read the Quran because I mean, just plainly gets obvious verses wrong. So again, it's not that he just made a few mistakes. It's that he continually lied throughout the entire debate. And I mean, it was crazy because I don't think I saw even like a single point that was like truthful or extremely misrepresented. It was the entire time he took quotes. He quoted stuff that just was taken out of context or just people didn't even quote. He made points that didn't make sense with the context, and so it was just so bad that I decided to say something about it and to show that no, Islam, there's not even a case for it. Islam is 100% more violent than Christianity. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And if there is a topic that you are interested in seeing but really haven't seen much discussion about, please let me know. I'm going to try to upload more videos on topics about Islam and just to encourage more debate and discussion about maybe some of these topics which I don't think have gotten enough traction within the community. So if you have any recommendations or suggestions that you would like to put out there, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.